I was a kid sitting in the bench of the park where, in the neighborhood where I used to live back in Costa Rica, and there was no one else. I would take my bike and sit on a bench and stare at the sunset pretty much every day. The sun would hit my skin, and the wind would set the atmosphere for what I would think about during those sunsets, which was music. I was immersed in the sight of an astonishing sunset. I would hear the birds and the bugs and the smell sometimes of the freshly baked cake that my mom had made in the other place where I would explore my musical ideas, which was the roof of my house. So I would have melodies in my head, and I would hum them to the voice recorder in my phone. And I would think about the instrumentals and the timbres and the sounds that I wanted to make, but I was alone. Like, I had no idea how to turn these ideas that came to my head into actual music, and the way these ideas came was pretty chaotic. And I didn't know about tempo, music keys, harmonies, or virtually any music concept that I could hold on to. The same way I was alone in that park, I was alone in my mind. It was just me and my ideas. But there was one thing that I was always sure about, and it's that I wanted to make music. I loved it, I felt it made me feel, it made me cry. It was the one thing I always knew I loved. So I naturally started to research for a way to make music and to make it sound correct. After all, I wanted to make music that sounded good, something that I could enjoy. So I remember I had really no idea where to start. And by the time I got introduced to the concept of music production and the concept of a digital audio workstation. And yeah, by some friends of mine and by the internet. And I remember it sounded so great. Some of these programs were even free, so I thought that I could start to make music right away. So that's what I did. I proceeded to install a free program called Reaper in which I could start to make music. I remember I spent a long time searching for videos and messing around with the program just so that I could get a sound out of it. I just wanted to know if the program was alive. It was kind of like waiting for a kid to say its first words. But instead of waiting, I needed to actively search for a way to make it speak. And I don't remember if I was able to do that afternoon, but I remember that it took me a while to figure that small thing out. Well, I remember also, by that time, one of my friends was really into music. He played the guitar very virtuously, and he also produced music with GarageBand. I wanted to join him to make music, so one time he invited me to come over to his house and make something together. But it ended up being nothing serious, but I just remember I also ended up only sitting on the side, kind of watching him use the program and commenting from time to time on what he was doing. I had no idea what was going on. He pressed a bunch of keys, and then a new window popped out of the program that he was using, then he moved a bunch of knobs, and then the sound gained a whole different character. And in the meantime, I had no idea what was going on. I was just as lost as I was in that park, kind of in my head, trying to make sense of the ideas that I had, and trying to put them into words so that my friend and I could understand each other. I felt that if I wanted to make music, I first needed to understand the music and learn how to make music the right way. But I mean, is there really a right way to do things in art? Do I really want to make it sound correct, and do I really not know how to make music? I mean, I'm just saying, I just had the ideas in my head. They were in my head. I had music in my head and it sounded good in my head. And I just needed to know a way to put this into a computer program or a piano or a guitar or somewhere that allowed me physically to reproduce the sound waves that I had carved in my head. Even though these ideas weren't really clear and ideas came chaotically and anarchically, they were there. The passion was also there, so I kept trying to learn. I messed around with Reaper and Ableton for about 3 months before I made my first instrumental, and it was way better than I would have thought. Especially knowing that no more than a year before I couldn't even get a sound out of these programs. And after a couple months, I was way more confident making music. I had already sketched the ideas for an album that I had thought about, and I had some demos of songs that I was really proud of. Still chaotic though, I still felt like I had no knowledge to hold on to back me up in knowing if what I was doing was correct. I just knew it sounded good, but I didn't really know why. And oftentimes the lack of knowledge also slowed me down because I got caught up in trying to follow rules and trying to make things right. But was that really what I wanted? I went back to the question that I had asked myself before. Is there really a right way to do things in art? And does it really matter? Growing up, I remember I was really into freestyle rap. In Latin America, it is a huge thing, and I would say it was even bigger when I was younger. So my brother, my friends, and I would watch loads and loads of videos of freestyle rap, and we would even meet up sometimes in a park or in school to freestyle ourselves. And I remember it being so fun because there was no filter, no rules, nothing. It was just us rapping on a track. And we were kids, even better, because we didn't really care about what people thought about us, or at least we cared way less than we do now. It was also during this time where I was getting a lot of information about music because, I searched for it constantly. After school, it was basically the only thing I did. And I started seeing how, in some cases, this lack of boundaries and rules is not necessarily bad. In fact, it's even encouraged. One of the producers that has been inspiring me the most recently is J Dilla. He was a producer from Detroit in the 90s, and he had a very unique style in his time because he seemed to just do what feels right without caring about a theory or being perfect. For example, he didn't use quantization, which is a tool that is used in music production, has been used, and it keeps still being used. And his MP3 also had. And it basically works that when you are playing MIDI stuff, it snaps the things into a grid so that it's perfectly in tempo, like drums in this case. And well, he didn't use it. And not only did he not use it, but he also decided to play his drums particularly out of that grid that he actually seemed to be escaping from. And if you listen carefully to some of his beats, you can notice how things are not placed perfectly in that timeline. And it sounds funky, and it sounds disorganized, but it sounds human. And that adds character to his sound and makes it unique. And I believe that's what made him unique in his time. And apparently the dude didn't pay much attention to music theory or rules within music. He just did what felt right. I wonder what his creative process looked like. Just imagine his studio sessions. Imagine doing what feels right and forgetting about everything else. Imagine just having that flow. Wouldn't that be so much more fun than trying to listen and obey structures so that we are correct? Related to Dilla, it also blew my mind the way hip-hop is related to jazz, especially when it comes to improvisation and the freestyle that I grew up watching. In both genres, the freestylers just flow imperfectly, humanly in the music. And even when the rapper stutters or when the dude playing the saxophone makes a mistake, they just come back up again and follow their flow, and somehow they fix that slip up that they did in the following seconds. And to be fair, to be good at doing this, you probably need years and years of practice and a lot of knowledge. But to me, what these people are saying with what they're doing is, screw it, I'll do it my way. Total anarchists in that moment when they are performing, embracing changes, slip-ups, not so clean sentences or sounds, and making art out of it. And I find that fascinating. Talking with other producers, I also noticed how this is actually a good thing sometimes. I was very insecure about my drum sounding off, and at that time I was having classes with an Argentinian producer, and I played him the beats that I was worried about, and he really wasn't worried. He actually encouraged me to keep doing things like that because it felt right, and even if it wasn't perfect. I remember that was a very liberating moment for me, because it's kind of like when you're embarrassed of something you do and your friends tell you that they do the same, and then you normalize it and then you start feeling way better about it. Like when you didn't study for a test and your friend tells you that they didn't study either, but that makes you suddenly way more secure and safe about the test, even though you still didn't understand a thing in chapter 3 of the physics textbook. Well, I get that quite often. So, yeah. Not only with the way we play music, but the way sounds and music are made can also be shifted in order to achieve certain feelings and sound that are chaotic but pretty cool to me too. like the dissonance you find in techno music, for example. Normally, in music, our brains search for melodies that are consonant, notes that sound harmonic when played together. But sometimes it is cool to find some dissonance to create tension, notes that when played together, you can notice that there's something weird about it, something off. And in techno music, it is common to find dissonant short progressions of notes that repeat over and over again over the song, but with some variations in sound character, timbre, or pitch. And you know, it kind of works like when you repeat a typo for long enough and people start thinking that you may know what you're doing, so it's fine. And for our brains, these repeated dissonances work a bit like that. And it sounds to me surprisingly good after a while. And I also remember when I was starting to make music, I made loops like this, random bass notes that don't necessarily sound good together. But since they were in a loop, and with some variations over time it started to sound okay, at least to me. And I mean, well, you may or may not like techno music, that's fair, but there are people that like it, and I'm included there. So, I mean, there's a niche for you to make music like that and be heard and enjoy it, and I also find that fascinating. But, I mean, here I am. I still have imposter syndrome. What am I doing? At TEDx, talk about music without virtually any knowledge about music. So, don't get me wrong. I wish I could read music sheets. I wish I could understand what my friend was doing on his computer when he invited me to come over to his house. And I wish I learned an instrument before, and I wish I knew music theory so that I could have my ideas more organized, and I wish I felt more secure about the music. But the point that I want to reach with this talk is not that you shouldn't learn the structures and rules about your craft. What I want to encourage is for you to embrace the lack of knowledge in the beginning, in that stage, as an opportunity to create new things and to enjoy whatever you're doing without the box that your previous knowledge puts you in terms of having fear and exploring new things, or to not try things because you have been told what you should or shouldn't try. I just want to encourage you to start whatever you have in mind, even if you have no idea where to start. Even if things seem chaotic and you are in a constant state of confusion in the beginning. Just play those drums of tempo, make those dissonances count, and follow whatever your heart tells you feels right. I'm sure that the journey alone is going to be worth it. Thank you.